Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back, welcome back. Dr. Jaws here, and a happy nearly St. Patrick's Day to you. St. Patrick's Day 2026 is going to be tomorrow, so hope everybody has, or already probably celebrated last weekend, or has fun plans for the following weekend. But yeah, so and it's going to be a really cool night talking about. You know, not Irish, but American, North American shark culture, because we're going to be doing part two of this series, where we're talking about the impact of Jaws and kind of how shark culture has evolved since the release of Jaws, both the book and the movie. And Jaws is like a really good inflection point. At least if you're talking about like North American shark culture, it is a very very good inflection point because there was like sort of one vague understanding. Hey Howard, welcome back. Hope you had a great weekend, and hope we did some St. Patrick's related activities. My wife and I are both a little Irish, so we enjoy celebrating, watching movies, and we were watching, what was it? It wasn't Riverdance. It was what do you call it? Feet of Flames, recording of Feet of Flames, which is just Irish dancing, which is super fun. So, but hope you had a good weekend, and hope you have a great St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. So, I really shouldn't be leading into St. Patrick's Day right now because it is North American Shark Culture Stream, and I was just talking about Jaws being a really important inflection point because before Jaws, we had yes, Jaws changed everything. Before Jaws, we kind of had a vague idea of what sharks were, where there really wasn't a lot of human interaction with them. And then what was interesting about last week's stream, I was very surprised to see how many reports of like really scary interactions there were, and some of these probably were not in the International Shark Attack file. I was actually really surprised to see that. And they went into like, some lurid detail. So we saw some like ancient relationships with sharks and kind of the relationship with sharks sort of being kind of frightening, and specifically the big ones like the white shark and the tiger shark and bull shark. And then also seeing a lot of misunderstanding where there was a little bit of last. Oh, nice! Went to a St. Patrick's Day party. Got home early the next day. Very nice. That sounds like a very proper celebration. Last week we were talking about just kind of like the beginning of shark science, and also just where sharks were in culture. So there's a lot of different North American cultural depictions of them, and just how they did evoke that fear. But then also there was a lot of early research that was just kind of cataloging sharks and starting to kind of build a library of their understanding, or our understanding of them, starting to name species. And then a lot of weird little experiments with shark repellent. We kind of ended last week on shark repellent and how it was not effective in the 40s, where there was this whole promotion for the military to be using these like shark repellents when they go to combat overseas, and it didn't really work. It was just kind of propaganda, and it really really didn't work. Famously for the USS Indianapolis disaster, which is also featured in the movie Jaws. So prior to Jaws, there was kind of like an amorphous, not really well-defined relationship with sharks. Part of that too is there wasn't a lot of leisure activity. Like tourism really wasn't established. Like there were some places that you could do like beach tourism and stuff, but our idea today of going on vacation and going to a resort or going to a beach, it was a lot more. It's kind of hard to imagine like how. I think for some people who maybe grew up in like after the 60s, that was more of a common practice. But prior to that, it really wasn't done as often. There was only very few places that had those kinds of resort destinations to kind of go to. And the point being, like, there wasn't a lot of really wasn't a lot of interaction with people just like going to beach towns and playing in the water, unless you lived there, And so with Jaws, that kind of came at the beginning of, or kind of like the early, like maybe not early, but like early to mid stages of tourism. And prior to Jaws, people didn't really think about sharks that much, and people didn't really like. There was some awareness, but there really wasn't like the hysteria that Jaws created. So I think what we'll do for tonight is we're gonna talk. Just like last week, I'm gonna kind of do a summary of what I have seen and like what I've observed as far as how shark culture has developed with Jaws and since Jaws, and we're going to talk about the pop culture, but also the science, and then we're going to take a deeper dive into other reflections about Jaws' impact and about just like resources that we have today that have really exploded, like really fantastic resources on how to study sharks and like things that are available that I never could have dreamed of 50 years ago. So I think with all that kind of rambling preamble, we'll dive into the specifics now. So there was a movie in the early 70s, and I mentioned it a couple times, Blue Water, White Death, and it was kind of really the first example of filming sharks underwater and doing it well, and specifically big sharks like the white shark. So, and we can play a clip. I think I have a clip of Blue Water, White Depth here. So let's see if I can. Whoops! No! Get me out of here! Get me out of here! Theater mode. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay. So this is some of like the earliest footage of white sharks underwater, and I do not recommend this movie unless you are comfortable with a lot of like very graphic scenes. There's just a lot of like really rough scenes in this movie, but and not just about sharks. There's a lot of marine wildlife harassment in this movie, and so it's very graphic, and I don't recommend it unless you're prepared to see that, and also you kind of come into it with with respect for the animals. But this footage in 1972, this was truly like incredible, and we didn't really realize that, or not realize, but like this is the first demonstration of being able to film a white shark in its natural habitat underwater. And some of the scenes in this movie are phenomenal, and like really terrifying. And specifically, there's a scene where a white shark is tearing up a horse carcass, like a horse leg, and it just you can see like the power of this animal. And white sharks are so interesting as an animal too, where I think we tend to forget that it's a rare part of the shark world. Like this is a very unusually large shark with an unusual set of teeth. Most sharks don't look like this. Most sharks are small. They're deep water. They hunt like little crabs and fishes. They don't really go after marine mammals like this. This is one of the very, very few species that goes after marine mammals. But it's still like phenomenal. It's like a lion or a tiger, it's a phenomenal animal to witness. And so when this movie came on the scene, it made a lot of waves and caught the attention of Steven Spielberg. So he actually asked some of the filmmakers who worked on Blue Water, White Death to help him with Jaws. And you can actually see some of that in scenes of Jaws. So I will play one here. I'm trying to... I don't know why my display is kind of acting weird, so I apologize for some of the framing, but here's like the famous scene with Hooper and Chief Brody submerging just to kind of get a better view of the shark underwater. And I'm sure everybody has seen Jaws, but just in case, Jaws is an extremely well-made film. It was a summer blockbuster from 1975. It's based on the book by Peter Benchley, which really was a bestseller, and kind of started to invoke some of that terror and some of that fear that sharks elicited. Because like sharks were just not well known, and at the time, people, because like prior to this movie, there was kind of such an amorphous understanding. To have Jaws be your first exposure to sharks, it really has a powerful and terrifying impact. And it evokes a lot of like deep-seated fears, where it's like, something massive and something that can eat you coming out of the darkness. Oh, here we go. Something massive and something that can eat you coming out of the darkness, and you can't predict where it is. That is a very primal fear. We touched upon that last week. So what's interesting, and what I wanted to point out about this scene, is it hops back and forth between the mechanical robot that they made for the movie Jaws and the clips of actual white sharks that were by the same team who did Blue Water, White Death. So in this scene right here, this shot, this is a mechanical shark. This is not real. This is the model, which they affectionately named Bruce. Just floating underwater. So, and you can kind of tell because it's a little stiff. It's a little bit too big. This is a real white shark. And you can kind of tell here because the snout is a lot more pointed. The Jaws shark is kind of funny because he has a huge mouth and kind of a squashed face. And it looks pretty good for the most part. But the head is kind of squashing. It kind of makes me think of a frog, honestly. And a real white shark has more of a conical snout. And so this is a real white shark. It's also moving a little bit more gracefully in the shot. So and that's really hard to replicate, of course. Let's see. So Hooper is looking at... That's a real shark. Just, again, the graceful movements. Just the fluidity that all sharks possess. It's kind of hard to replicate in a machine. And for comparison, Jurassic Park, which is, like Steven Spielberg, again, those robotic dinosaurs. Oh, here we go. So that's a model. That's the robot. And actually, let's see if we can get this frame. This is actually a real shark. Sorry, there's so much happening. I should probably pause. The robotic dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, they work really well. If you look really closely, you can kind of see a little bit of like the rigidity in the movement. But that's with a robotic dinosaur on land. Imagine a submerged robot. It's so difficult to get that to work seamlessly, and it's amazing that they were able to do what they did with Jaws. So, okay. So I want to pause here. So this... Sorry. Here... Alright, it's not letting me go to the frame that I want. Okay, you can kind of see it. So this is the Jaws shark. This is the robot, Bruce. And I'll just call it Bruce from now on. But you can see how like the eye is bulging. The mouth is humongous, but the snout is really short. And it's like this is one of the ways you can tell between the robot and an actual white shark. Just the snout is too short. The eyes are just kind of bulging from the top of the head, and the mouth is huge proportionally. So, and overall, the overall design just gives it kind of like a squat shape. And it looks a little different from what real white sharks look like. So freaky, like really effectively terrifying, but it's a little bit too... It's a little bit wonky. Now this frame right here, this is a real shark that they filmed up close that is ramming into an actual cage. And again, you can tell because the movement is too fluid to be a robot. And that's a real white shark too. So, beautiful shot, by the way. But just like those beautiful movements, you could see the shark waving its caudal fin really effortlessly. So, and we'll hop back and forth. I think the shark comes back at the cage one more time, if I remember correctly. There we go. So that's a robot. That's Bruce ramming poor Richard Dreyfuss, and that's actually really good. That's still the robot, but that's actually really, really good. And actually, from this, there is a perspective. Okay, like if you look at it from the snout down, it doesn't look that bad. That still looks actually really good. This is all the robot. Huge mouth, really freaky. Still the robot. They did a good job, and you have to imagine this is 1975, and they were able to pull this off. That's really, truly incredible. So, as far as the shark's design, it's ultimately the proportions are a little weird in the head. I honestly everything else looks pretty okay. Like the body, the pectoral fins, the dorsal fin. It's really just the head that it's a little off. And it's like the mouth looks incredible, but just and that's a real shark, by the way. I wanted to wait till this scene. This is a real. I forget if this is a white shark or mako shark because they filmed a real shark that got tangled in the in a dummy underwater cage, like a slightly scaled down cage. And pretty sure that actually might be a mako because I'm pretty sure behind the scenes they were trying to get white sharks closer to the camera, and then it was a mako shark that unfortunately kind of collided in with the cage. So, but anyway, want to read what just catch up on the comments. Sorry, I don't think there was much of any protection for sharks by the time Jaws came out. Yes, 100%. So, and I'm glad you brought that up, Howard. So as far as the public's relationship with sharks, prior to Jaws, we were fishing them as a resource, and those fisheries crashed really quickly. It depends on the species, but a lot of the fisheries really weren't doing well. And honestly, through like the early half of the 20th century, a lot of fisheries were just kind of done just without abandon. It was just there was no protection for any kind of fishery, and it wasn't until the 70s, but really the 80s. The 80s experienced a lot of steep declines with shark fisheries. And also there was a little bit of a shift away from shark fisheries, mostly because they crashed in the United States. So dogfish are a really good example. Poor beagles not so much in the United States, but poor beagles in Eastern Europe are a really good example. Fisheries that have just like crashed. Because sharks, because of their life history characteristics, they don't grow quickly, they don't reproduce quickly, and that doesn't sustain the fishery like a lot of bony fish can, because bony fish can spawn by the thousands to millions depending on the species, and some depending on the species, the larvae can grow really quickly. So, but anyway, a lot of no protections for sharks prior to this movie. Peter Benchley writes the book in the I believe it was the early 70s when he wrote the book Jaws, and it draws from the Jersey Shore attacks in 1916, which we touched upon last episode, and it just invokes this fear of this vague, this amorphous terror, like this amorphous element that you can't predict, you can't. You have no idea what it is and where it is, but it's like you're swimming and doing this like safe, leisurely activity, and then all of a sudden, like your experience turns into a nightmare as this massive animal just pulls you underwater. It truly is like a terrifying concept. And when Steven Spielberg brought it to life in 1975, it was such a visceral reaction where people, and in a lot of different ways, like the first and the most famous reaction is people were afraid to go in the water, and the phrase is it's like actually, shoot, I should know this. Hold on, there's a famous Jaws phrase. It's like just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, or is it like there's a phrase like that? And forgive me, I like. There's like a famous phrase that I don't know why I'm not thinking about it right now, but it's like just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, or the movie that made you not go back in the water, or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, Jaws terrified people. It really reframed people's understanding of sharks to the point of hysteria and paranoia. People were terrified of sharks. People really thought every beach was basically dangerous. And then that was one reaction, is that people's understanding of shark is it's a big thing that can kill me, and it can live in anywhere, any water, and be there anytime, and it's just this big thing with teeth, and that's it. It's monster with teeth. Literally, the trailer for Jaws in the 70s, is like the shark is a devil or something. It's really just horror, and that's it. Thanks, Howard. That might be from Jaws too. Yeah. So. That was one reaction with Jaws. The other reaction from Jaws, unfortunately, was Jaws is like a two-part movie where the first part is a horror film and the second part is an adventure film. So the first part is all the shark attacks that happen at Amity Island, and it's truly terrifying. And then the second part is Chief Brody, Hooper, and Quint going on the boat to go after the shark, and it's like a nautical adventure. It's actually very capital R romantic, like in terms of like man versus nature, battling the elements, trying to overcome natural forces, and that inspired a lot of trophy hunting, unfortunately. So a lot of people wanted to be like Quint. A lot of people wanted to go after a great white. And a huge amount of sharks were slaughtered just for recreation. So it's not just commercial shark fishing or bycatch, but trophy hunting. And that, unfortunately, was a huge reaction. Yeah, Howard, big 100%. I'm going to start this because you're absolutely right. Big shark trophy hunters went nuts after that, 100%. And it's really sad because, when, that's your only understanding of sharks, and especially the white shark, is just this like big toothy monster to be slain. It evokes kind of it's like a narrow-minded bravado. It's very similar to big. I mean, it's the same thing as big game hunters, like big game, like African big game hunters. Like people who go after elephants or tigers or lions. It's the same thing where it's just like it's such a sad, narrow-minded view of one part of this very complicated and beautiful animal. And what's weird is that, Jaws immediately had a very negative impact on sharks. But I think that opened the door to a positive reassessment of sharks and kind of really opened the door of shark conservation a little bit, where Jaws became a focal point, upon which people can talk against and counter and start to kind of really learn about sharks and reframe sharks in a way that is not painting them as these like mindless. I mean, and that's the thing too. I can't emphasize this enough. The white shark is an anomaly among sharks. It is like this is everybody's first idea of what a shark looks like and what a shark is, but it is such an anomaly. It is really, really the weirdest. Oh, this is so interesting. Wait a minute, Howard. There were so many gory cultist shark magazines feeding the frenzy. Yes, yep. Which is really sad, and that's a great point too. There's also like a watershed of weird horror movies. Like, what is it? There was one about orcas. Like, there's multiple Jaws sequels. There's an orca movie. There's a snakehead movie, which is really silly. Anaconda probably falls in the same vein. Honestly, even though it's not marine, it falls in the same category. There's a lot of Jaws ripoffs and essentially the same thing where it's like this. Oh, there was like a grizzly bear movie I think in the 70s. Like there's a lot of weird movies that just came after Jaws where it's like monstrous animal comes out of nowhere and kills you and whatever. So, but what's interesting is that again, I was kind of going off a tangent where white sharks are really, really unique in the shark world. They're very, very like when you think of there's 500 plus species of sharks, there's only maybe 10 that go after marine mammals. If I'm being generous, and off the top of my head, it would be like white shark, bull shark, tiger shark, oceanic white tip, dusky sharks. Maybe Galapagos sharks, maybe bronze whalers. It's not a big list. Like sharks that are large enough and that have the dentition, like the serrated teeth, the large, broad serrated teeth for tearing up flesh. It's a very small category of sharks compared to all the other sharks in the world. It's kind of amazing how the white shark. And I know I'm giving it a lot of attention right now. Oh, Greenland shark, thank you. Yes, Greenland shark, sleeper sharks, 6-gill and 7-gill sharks. Really good point. The deepwater sharks, and they can get enormous, and they can do serious damage, but they also live in the deep, so they don't really. I mean, Greenland sharks are in the shallows in the Arctic, so Greenland sharks can be hazardous to people in that way. But I mean, there's very few interactions between humans and Greenland sharks compared to like temperate and tropical waters. But it's a good example of a large shark that can dismember large prey. So that's a great example, actually. So thank you. So Greenland, Pacific sleeper, southern sleeper, and then the 6 gills and 7 gills. So that brings it up to like kind of 10, if I'm counting right, but like around 10. But still, it's the vast minority of sharks. But what's interesting is that with white sharks, because of like what they look like and because of Jaws, this is everybody's first introduction to sharks. It's just like the T-Rex is your first introduction to dinosaurs, and people can make the mistake of like that's the only dinosaur. That's what a dinosaur is. This is the only shark. That's what a shark is. And the reality is, there's so much more. There's so much more nuanced, and there's so many varieties of sharks, and they really are this colorful, beautiful array of animals. And the white shark itself, it's clearly not a mindless killer. It doesn't just live, eat, breathe. What was the Hooper's quote? Is like swims, eats, makes little sharks. It's a lot more interesting than that. White sharks, and we touched on it before, but they're said to be the most intelligent of the sharks, or one of the more intelligent sharks. They're very careful about how they interact with foreign objects or prey. They're inquisitive, they're curious, they show a lot of different kinds of personalities. Some are more shy, some are a little bit more aggressive. They have interesting relationships with each other, where there's hierarchies, there's sometimes territoriality between individuals. And then, as far as human and shark interactions, again, don't get in the water with a white shark, because it is truly a dangerous animal. But it's not limited to just being this monster with teeth. It's an animal that commands a lot of respect, and is not this mindless hunter. It's this amazing global cruising, really really cool like shark that just like goes across oceans to like explore these, like not explore, but like see these different parts of the world, interact with these different parts of the world. And when it does arrive at a food source, it's very tactful. So it patiently waits. It can be chased away by seals. It can. I think Blue Planet, the latest Blue Planet showed an interesting behavior where seals can gain up on the white shark. But white sharks themselves, they're very tactful hunters, where they can swim. They tend to swim in front of the sun in order to hide themselves as they go after a seal. They make calculated moves as far as taking that first bite and then swimming away to see what happens in reaction, to protect itself. It's just like they're very interesting animals, and they're not these mindless eating machines. They're these like really really cool animals with like a little bit of a personality, and a lot more than just what Jaws is. So. But anyway, the bigger point is that Jaws kind of became a focal point for research, where scientists could use it as a counter argument. So and start to go into more detail about shark biology, shark behavior, and use Jaws as a justification to fight against, or to kind of like counter in terms of, hey, sharks are not mindless eating machines, and here's why. And then you get into the thesis, and that also translates into the beautiful myriad nature documentaries that came after. So after Jaws, there's a really cool, for public knowledge, there's a lot of really documentaries in the 80s, really the 90s. And this is when Discovery Channel was great, and it's not great anymore, but it was great. There was a point in time in which it was great. So one of the most, for me personally, my favorite documentaries that really had a huge impact on my life. Is from this period, and honestly, I think there was such an interesting optimism in the kind of like in the media of the 90s and the early 2000s. But The Ultimate Guide to Sharks was a Discovery Channel series. I mean, it was the Ultimate Guide series, so it was a Discovery Channel series that really went into a lot of cool biology, evolutionary history, shark culture. It touched upon all these like really interesting aspects of sharks that really weren't made, like they really weren't like talked about. And we're talking about sharks in terms of like our modern understanding of them. in terms of they are a huge part of our ecosystem. They are the apex predators that are actually indicators of how healthy or unhealthy an ecosystem is. Like if a shark is there, that indicates that okay, this marine system has enough food, has enough resources, is healthy enough to support a shark. It's kind of like a dipstick to the rest of the system, where if you have a healthy marine ecosystem, you have a shark at the top. Because like sharks span the globe. There's so many different species, and sorry, I'm going to skip ahead in the Ultimate Guide thing. And they're huge engineers, or they're huge components of ecosystems. I want to skip ahead to this episode of Ultimate Guide. They have so many really cool moments, but I want to skip ahead to the evolutionary timeline, or the shark sense section. Sorry. Also, what a great intro! I love the Ultimate Guide intro. It's so cool. So I'm gonna catch up on the comments. So yeah. Thank you, Howard. Sorry about the audio. But Ultimate Guide went into the first footage of Greenland sharks. So this was, I want to say this is 1996 is the first time we've seen a Greenland shark on film. Let's see if we can zoom up to that. Hold on, sorry. So many sharks happening. Okay, there we go. This is the first footage of a Greenland shark on film. This is by Nick Kalianis, who's an underwater photographer who actually lives in Maryland. So he's actually not too far. I live in Virginia, but he's in Maryland, which is really cool. I never knew that for the longest time. But this is the first footage of a Greenland shark ever, which is so cool and incredible to think about. So it only was in the 90s that we really got to see these glimpses of the species. So, and it's a great demonstration of how sharks can look very different from people's popular perceptions of them. So like documentaries like this really start to help fit what's the word? Like help expand our understanding, our popular understanding of what sharks are and what they look like. One of my favorite sections from this documentary is talking about the senses. And we'll go into this one because this is going to be too long for a single stream. But this documentary goes into how sharks sense their environment. So this section is about their lateral line, it's a pressure sensing feature that all fishes have. But basically, if a fish makes a vibration in the water, the shark picks up on it, and it helps them locate their prey. It helps them understand that, okay, there's something near me, I can't see it, may not even smell it, but I can feel it. Although it is very likely that they smell it, because smell is like one of their first senses. So this also goes into the ampullae lorenzini, which are the electro-sensing organs that sharks have. Here we go. So these are jelly-filled sacs that actually pick up electrical impulses, or electrical current. So every living thing gives off an electrical current, but sharks are especially sensitive to that. So it's kind of like a sixth sense. It's a way for sharks to detect prey items that may not be visible. So if you had something buried in the sand, or like if you have something that visually, like if a shark was blind or blindfolded and couldn't see what it was hunting, it could absolutely still pick it up and close in on it very easily. So, which is so cool. And then I think there was a really cool evolutionary section here somewhere. Make sure. And if I can't find it, oh yeah, there we go. I see it. We start to kind of get into more details about the history of sharks, and now like the deep history, so kind of like how they evolved. So We've seen this one before. I forget the Latin name for this. It's like the scissor tooth shark, but I forget the name. This is Helicoprion, the world tooth shark. Which really, these guys, I think they're technically chimeras since they're too old. But in the 90s and the 2000s, with things like Discovery Channel and History Channel and Animal Planet, like there was a lot of public programming that was really education focused and really started to kind of like teach, a whole generation of people something that generations prior didn't learn or didn't know. And it's just because like it's a mix of like the research got better and better, the picture got better, but now we're also in this era of like a lot of interactivity, a lot of like the beginning of like kind of like computer graphics, the beginning of the internet era really kicked off, I think 1990, and all this helped kind of create this interesting new take, like this interesting new perspective that helped broaden education to the world and make it more colorful and make it more fun. So, but kind of getting away from, let me go back to, and what's so funny is like I'm still talking about the preamble. So much has happened. Adestus, thank you, Howard. The scissor tooth shark is Adestus, so thank you. I appreciate that because I totally forgot the name. So as far as shark pop culture goes, Jaws created a lot of fear in the 70s and trophy hunting in the 70s. The 80s was the beginning of reassessing our approach to sharks and educational programming. You had like these really cool like wildlife and nature programs starting to kind of appear. You had like Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. You had Jack Hanna, and then famously in the 90s, you have Steve Irwin, who I know he focused on crocodiles, but he had some shark specials, a touch on sharks. And this kaleidoscope of personalities and this kaleidoscope of programming, really blossomed in the 90s and I would say the early 2000s, with fantastic programming from Discovery Channel, fantastic programming from Animal Planet, and just like a lot of really cool lenses into this world that most people didn't really get to see before. So that was a really great shift in pop culture for sharks. In the 2010s, you get into this weird zone where you're having it's very strange how this all played out. And this is when I was these were my college years, where the traditional the traditional kind of bastions of like education started to get weird. And I'm gonna name Discovery Channel specifically. It started to get kind of shilly. Like it started to kind of lean into more sensationalist programming because, and my guess is because it made it. I wonder if it was starting to lose viewership. I don't really know, but it started to do weird sensationalist programming. And Shark Week, which used to be this really popular, and Shark Week was established in the late 80s. Shark Week was like the most watched televised event. It used to be really focused on shark science and shark education, and then it transitioned to just nonsense. And like some of it's gotten better, but bad science, thank you. And actually even no science. The worst offender, and I will never forget this, is that stupid 2013 Megalodon thing. That special that Discovery Channel did, positing that Megalodon still exists, has caused a lot of unnecessary damage in people's perception of sharks. I know from my own experience in terms of like doing lectures and doing book signings and traveling, and, as far as like all my Dr. Jaws stuff, that's probably the biggest thing I've run into on the negative side is people believing that Megalodon still exists and me having to explain to them, no, it was this amazing, awesome creature that lived millions of years ago. It existed once. It was this really amazing animal, but just in terms of how things played out with evolution, with competition from, ironically, white sharks and other animals, it died out. It was too big. It was too big to sustain itself. Essentially, it just wasn't fit to survive. The subsequent eras. It went extinct, and it it's not secretly hiding anywhere. It's extinct. And if it was secretly hiding anywhere, we would have seen it by now because its chief prey item is whales. It's like an animal that has to be at the surface to breathe air. So if we haven't run into a megalodon now, we will never run into it. Now, if we were talking about a deep sea, like a deep dwelling leviathan, maybe, I don't know, but probably not, because like we've already been to the deepest part of the ocean, like the Mariana Trench. We'll still discover new sharks, and we have discovered new sharks, but these are often smaller species, where species are hiding in plain sight. So anyway, that 2013 special on Megalodon really caused a lot of damage and sucked in terms of like the impact that it had misinforming people. Discovery Channel did a lot of weird stuff like that too. They did a dragon documentary and a mermaid documentary, and like just weird stuff, and I don't know why, other than maybe they were losing viewership and they're trying to make money quickly. I don't really know. So, thank you, Howard. Yes. One thing with Shark Week is that they are indirectly responsible for piles of YouTube shark content, some of which is outstanding. No fresh teeth. So 2 different comments, and I love both of them. So no fresh teeth. Period. 100%. If Megalodon was still alive, we would see brilliant white teeth that are humongous. We would find these very easily, but we don't see that. We only see the fossilized black teeth or like brown teeth. Like, we do not see fresh teeth from Megalodon. So fantastic, Howard. We're gonna star that actually. And actually, that would be a good bumper sticker too. Just like a black Megalodon tooth saying no fresh teeth. Period. I love that. And actually, you make a really good point. One thing with Shark Week, that they're indirectly responsible for piles of YouTube shark content, some of which is outstanding. So I do agree with that. And that was the second prong I wanted to get into, which is you had traditional media starting to fail us, as far as like education goes. But then you also had this flowering of, and I'll never forget the YouTube Wild West. Like I will never forget that interesting era in the early 2010s when YouTube was a new thing. It was this untested concept that started to really take off. And I know YouTube was established in 2005, but it didn't really take off until, I really want to say, the 2010s. That's when it started to get like jazzy. It started to get like really cool and huge, and people were starting to realize, oh my gosh, you can make money off of this, and like you can reach all these people, and like there's like YouTube celebrities. And so with that, you have this creation of these fun little niches of shark culture, including this one. I love our niche of shark content, but talking about sharks in good faith, like talking about sharks and building communities of people who really care about sharks. And there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of channels and content that really is talking about them in the way that it should be talked about, because there's no limitations. And it's a double-edged sword, because at the same time, there are some not good shark YouTube channels. There are some weird ones, like weird like conspiracy theory ones, like weird ones that tout weird stuff. But the nice thing about the comments is those channels usually have people who call them out on their garbage. And on the flip side, you have some like really great ones, like Atlantic White Shark Conservancy or White Shark Video. Both of them actually do a great job talking about a great white shark in a responsible way. Really appreciating it as an animal and not like foaming at the mouth sensationalist content about a white shark. They're just talking about a white shark as if it's a normal shark. Just they're approaching it just like they would approach like a pygmy shark. It's just like they're talking about it in a scientific lens. So Sharks for Kids does a lot of really great stuff. And I know it's more like children oriented, but like they do a lot of really great content that I really appreciate. And then kind of the biggest thing that has been really cool is that there's a lot of accessible science available in social media and YouTube. I mean, and I gotta be careful when I say social media, because again, you have to verify where your sources are 100%. Like just as you're creating accessibility for good sources, people who have a platform now, and I will say many scientists have, I don't want to say taken advantage of this, but like I guess I will say that, but I mean that positively. Like many scientists have taken advantage of this opportunity to talk about sharks, to do these platforms. Vicky Vasquez comes to mind, where and she does a good job, like having a base, but also doing like pop media content while also doing real shark science. Like she kind of does it all, which is really cool. So there's people who are weird in the social media world, and then there's people who are like really awesome, and it's just like you have to just kind of verify your sources and just make sure that what they're talking about stands critical review, and also like the intention is about conservation, about actual shark science, and it's not like weird sensationalist you know like clickbaity stuff. And you can tell you can tell the difference. So related to accessibility, and we'll take a look at this clip. One of the most amazing things that this world of kind of like social media and online content has unlocked is access to research, and we'll get into that later. But also access to incredible views of the ocean that like we wouldn't have had before. And one of my favorites is Okeanos, so the NOAA expeditions that take you into the deep sea. And it's just here. It's available on YouTube. It's so cool. Like just these even 20 years ago, people would just they would go wild over this kind of footage. And now because of the improvement of camera technology, because of improvement with accessibility, we have better cameras and cameras that can handle these extreme pressures and extreme depths. And then we also have this incredible interconnectivity where you can easily see some of these images from the bottom of the sea. Like this is stuff that is happening in our world like right now, and you can see it, which is so cool. Like these glimpses of to really how sharks live. And kind of what's interesting is like this is the mix of footage, this kind of footage, the mix of like white shark footage, the mix of like angel shark footage and diving footage, like you're starting to see the true picture of sharks, in that they're a very biodiverse group of animals that occupy all these different niches in the ocean, have evolved in this beautiful way where and are some of the oldest animals on the planet. And you just like they're not just this one image of a toothy monster. They're just this incredible, beautiful array of animals that just like you can spend a whole life studying them and not learn everything, which is so cool. Unfortunately, I'm saying this while a shark is being eaten by a deep sea grouper. And that's also another thing that breaks the archetype, which is sharks are not necessarily the biggest, baddest animal in the sea. Sometimes they get eaten. So, and related to that, this is very sad, and this kills me, but a white shark is not the apex predator of the ocean. I mean, maybe in some parts of the sea it is, but really the apex predator of the sea is an orca. As far as a natural apex predator, nothing tops an orca, so which is kind of interesting. But I hate saying that; it kills my soul. like saying that, because sharks are the best. But yeah, I mean, like it's so cool. Just like the more we learn, the more complete the picture, the clearer the picture is, and just it's such an interesting age that we're seeing things that we've never seen before. So now, related to that, I've been talking about the pop culture side a lot, but let's talk about the science side and the conservation side. So I mentioned earlier that the 80s experienced a collapse in fisheries. So a lot of shark fisheries really tanked in the 80s. And actually, a lot of fisheries in general really started to plummet in the 80s as well. And there was an understanding of urgency in terms of creating protections and creating moratoriums and kind of like trying to pull things back. Understanding that, okay, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to have no natural resources left. It's kind of like this is a horrible. I hate to use this analogy, but this is the simplest way to put it. It's kind of like banking, in a sense that if you keep taking and taking and taking, if you keep withdrawing, you're going to have nothing left, and that's not going to be good when you need something. And so you need to do a balanced mix of investing or depositing and withdrawing, and that way you can keep a system sustaining. So similarly, with a natural ecosystem with natural resources, you cannot keep taking fishes without abandon. You need to create space for fishes to grow and reproduce so that there's more fishes in the future, and there you have a balanced cycle in which everybody is happy. Like conservationists are happy where fishes are being protected. Fishermen, commercial fishermen, are happy in which they can still harvest their resource and fuel that economy. And it's just a delicate balance. And there's more nuances to that, and specifically, like, I will say, for me, one of the things I really care about advocating for is like sharks. The biggest plight for sharks today is bycatch. They're accidentally caught in a lot of fisheries, and they're still being slaughtered by like incredible amounts because of that. So I still want to emphasize that bycatch and commercial fishing still are the biggest threats to sharks today. At least in this part of the world, it's kind of the biggest thing that's hurting them negatively. And so one thing people could do to help is rethink their choices as far as what they consume. Do you still want to consume as much seafood as before, or do you want to balance that diet with like other options, like other sources of protein? This gets into a whole other debate that I don't know if we'll have time for today. But bycatch is like the biggest thing that's kind of threatening sharks in North America today. I would say bycatch and coastal development, and indirectly climate change, but really bycatch and coastal development are the two things that really are negatively impacting sharks now, at least in this part of the world. But anyway, in the 80s and the 90s, in the 80s, a lot of fisheries, and especially shark fisheries, crashed. There was a sense of urgency to have measures in place and protections in place. And so in the 90s, this is where you start to begin the establishment of good conservation practices and protected species. And there's different levels of protection throughout the world. So some of the protection is with a individual country. So in the United States, as an example, the Endangered Species Act, it actually is pretty robust, where if a species is declared endangered in the United States, it changes the approach to it changes everything as far as like how you can approach certain things like zoning or certain practices relating to that species, where it starts to get access to resources, research, and implementation of protective measures that non-endangered species don't have. But endangered species, or species declared in the United States as endangered, they basically are entitled to a whole different framework of thinking, and they are considered when there's development of, like development of different areas, like how you use a piece of land or water. Just like it's really interesting how they actually, the protections on that level are pretty good. For sharks in the United States, they've actually received I think there's room for improvement, but they have received a pretty, what's the word? I don't know if I should say strong, but they've received a pretty significant amount of protection, in the sense that the majority of the large shark species are, you should not be and cannot be fishing them in the United States, including the white shark. What's interesting is that David Schiffman, who is a pretty famous, in terms of like, we're talking about shark scientists who are like personalities and who have a pretty solid online presence. David Schiffman, and who also he's the author of Why Sharks Matter, which is a good shark conservation book. He recently is involved in an investigation in terms of there was some fishermen in Florida who hooked a white shark, and who are bragging about it online, and a lot of people in the comments are saying, hey, you guys, what are you doing? Like, this is a protected species. You cannot be fishing this. And David himself is kind of leading the charge on, reporting that, and, just educating the public. Hey, this species is protected. You can't fish this. Many large sharks receive that kind of protection. Sandbar sharks are protected species in the United States. Dusky sharks are protected species. Curiously enough, makos and hammerheads, they've kind of waffled in that definition. They're both hammerheads are critically endangered, as we know. Makos are endangered, or vulnerable to endangered, depending on the species. Actually, let me double check that. I think both species are endangered. But anyway, they both deserve protections. The United States has been a little bit waffly about that. So that gets to the second layer of protections, which are international protections. And the two big ones for sharks are CITES and CMS. If a shark is listed on either of those two appendices, they have protections in terms of there's an agreement between countries not to trade this species, not to fish the species. And a lot of the charismatic sharks that we know today, and even some ones that aren't as charismatic, they're given that protection. So whale sharks are a great example. White sharks, oceanic white tips, thank goodness. The hammerheads on that level are given that deference. A lot of the angel sharks in the Mediterranean. So point being, those protections really started to increase. I would say the 90s was the beginning, but I would say the 2010s and 2020s, they really started to get more and more robust, which is great. Because I think there's a global awareness of how sharks are not doing well as a whole. Some species are fine, and I always use the kind of like the thirds rule, where a third are okay, a third are vulnerable, they're kind of in the middle, and a third are definitely endangered and really need immediate conservation attention. So I'm gonna check mako shark's status really quick, just to make sure I'm not getting that wrong. I'm pretty sure. Okay, I don't know what's going on. I'm pretty sure mako sharks are endangered. But oh, there we go. Yes, they are. Okay, here we go. So you can see longfin mako is endangered and shortfin mako is endangered. So both species are endangered. So they are very much deserving of protection. As far as shark science goes, since the 80s, the research has expanded tremendously, where you have a lot of behavioral studies. You start to see how sharks act socially with one another. I mentioned hierarchies before. Many species have social hierarchies. They have dominance within a species or between species, which is kind of interesting. Species are very complicated in relationships with coral reefs. A lot of our streams that we've done on coral reef species show this really cool pattern of site fidelity or migration to different parts of the reef, for mating purposes. Really complex like spatial relationships. The studies have flowered like tremendously in terms of genetics. That's been an exciting new field. Was it eDNA, environmental DNA? The ability to find sharks that you may not directly observe, but you can take a sample of water and actually have traces of its DNA in that sample, which is unbelievable to think about. But there's a lot of like really, really cool fields that have flourished. We're discovering more and more species. And as an example, when I was a kid in the 90s, there were about 300 species of sharks. And, in the past 30 years, it's gone up to 500. So when you think of like the total timeline, of our understanding of sharks and kind of North American shark culture, it went through this period of fear, and I want to say ignorance, but not in a negative sense. Ignorance in the sense that people didn't really bother about sharks. They didn't really like interact with them too much. And then hysteria with Jaws and the Jaws era. And then curiosity and knowledge and this kind of explosion of accessibility to seeing the total picture of sharks. That just has flourished. It's kind of amazing to think about, like when you look at the global time scale, how much the script is flipped in a good way. So it's an exciting time, honestly, as far as sharks go, because it's not this downward trajectory. It's seeing that they've been in trouble, like their reputation has been maligned, but also more importantly, the actual numbers, the species have been in such significant trouble, and catching it in time helping to kind of level it out and hopefully increase populations. So we'll see. That that part is yet to be seen. There are some preliminary studies in Virginia specifically that have indicated a moderate recovery depending on the species, but it's going to take a long time to really start to see significant gains. And I'm looking forward to it in terms of like, I think I am optimistic. I will say there's a very real possibility that a few species may go extinct in my lifetime, and I hope not. But the ones that come to mind are the lost shark or the Pondicherry shark. Those two are pretty famous Indo-Pacific Carcharinus sharks that we have not seen in a very long time. And then they pop up again randomly, but then we don't see them for a very long time. So those species really might be going extinct, and I really hope not. But there's many species that I think we have caught in time, and I think the awareness and sort of the deference that's given to them may be enough, and I hope it is. So we'll see as time goes on. One species I'm particularly curious to see what happens is the sand tiger shark, Carcharis taurus. So that species recently crashed in its status to critically endangered. It's a critically endangered species, but weirdly enough, it's very popular in aquaria around the world, and there is kind of like this breeding program with them. And I don't know ultimately how that's going to play into their fate. I don't know if they're naturally going to recover and be okay, or if they're going to need some assistance. Similarly to cheetahs, I don't know. So we'll see as far as that goes. So, but that's kind of my overall. I know that took an entire hour, but that's my overall view of kind of what happened with shark culture, with Jaws and since Jaws. And ultimately, the story is like positive, but. Enough for me. I think what we'll do for the second half of the stream is take a look at other people's opinions on what happened and Jaws' impact, both as a film and then also as the consequences of it. And then if we have time, we'd love to kind of highlight some great resources for sharks that are accessible today that, even 10 years ago really weren't that readily available. And I remember when I was in college, I would just dream of having some of these resources, and now it's great that we do. So it's so cool. So we'll start with the last section of last week we talked about Castro's paper. Jose Castro is a really famous North American shark scientist and has this incredible study on the history of sharks in North America. So I'm going to post this in the chat for future viewers. Because it's such a good study. But here we go. So the Jaws era. In 1974, Peter Benchley's great novel Jaws was published, followed a year later by the movie of the same title. The movie became one of the most influential movies in history, affecting the attitudes of millions of people towards sharks in the ocean. The movie's powerful images were remembered every time the movie watchers entered the beach in the following decades. The movie also set off a shark-killing frenzy that lasted decades. Shortly after the movie appeared, shark fishing as sport became popular, and in the next decades, hundreds of shark fishing clubs and tournaments appeared along the U.S. East Coast. These tournaments were held monthly at many seaside locations during the summer months. The movie caused such antipathy towards sharks that tournaments had prize categories for the most sharks killed and the greatest number of pounds of sharks landed. Emulating the fishermen in Jaws, shark fishermen saw themselves as heroes ridding the seas of sharks. It's really sad. This unfortunate attitude and ecological catastrophe lasted for nearly 2 decades. The U.S. recreational shark landings for 1979 were 11,000 tons. By 1989, it decreased to 1,600 tons, and to 660 tons by 2002. It's extremely sad. So, hey, Quackers, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. We're just in time for we're resuming exactly where we left off with the history section of the stream. The first part of the stream was basically an overview of how shark culture has changed since Jaws, and now we're kind of taking off with direct resources. But hope you had a great weekend, and happy St. Paddy's Day to you tomorrow. But hope you had a great weekend and celebrate a little bit. So I want to say, by the way, so we're talking about the enormous amount of shark fishing in the 70s. So yeah, crazy time to jump in the stream. So the shark fishing in the 70s and the 80s, I really need to shout out someone I always respected and appreciated, but it's really incredible their impact on sharks. And that is Dr. Jack Music, who passed away fairly recently, but he was with the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, and he established the oldest shark research survey in the United States and possibly the world. I think it is the world's oldest at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. And I'm very proud to have been part of it briefly with sharks in the Chesapeake Bay. But this survey mimicked commercial shark fishing, and it was a way to kind of assess, how shark populations were doing in the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. And by having a data set, doing a survey year after year, and what they do is they tag sharks and they throw them back. Sometimes they will keep samples depending on the species, but often, as far as the survey worked, they would set these long lines, hook sharks, measure them, take their biometrics, and then throw them back in the ocean to make sure they're okay, and monitor their health when they're okay. So, but having this data set created a time series, and this survey has been in continuous operation for decades, and it helps illuminate the biology and ecology of the sharks and ultimately like what their populations were doing, and really helped illustrate these crashes. And it's vital data that helped establish policy regarding species like the sandbar shark. I would say Virginia's flagship shark is a sandbar shark, in a sense as special protection status, in part because of the data that we found from this survey. It's a very well-known species in Virginia research. We realized that with its life history characteristics, it wasn't handling the fishing pressure well. So it's one of the earlier sharks that received protection. So, not this. Where is it? So Virginia Institute of Marine Science does have this is the Shark Research Survey at VIMS, and they run into quite a few amazing species. This one is actually a tiger shark. But they have a lot of great resources in terms of like the survey details. This is where they survey, so the different longline stations. These are the species that they catch. So the most populous is the Atlantic sharp-nosed shark, followed by the sandbar shark. So again, Virginia's flagship shark. Atlantic sharp-nosed shark is probably the most populous shark on the east coast of the United States. It's a species I've worked with directly, and I really like these guys. They're so cool. They're very small, but very feisty. You have spinner sharks, black-tip sharks, dusky sharks. Really, dusky sharks are so important as far as like they're one of the earliest endangered species on our coast. Like earliest is in a sense like it's one of the most. What's the word? It deserves a heck of a lot of attention. Dusky sharks infamously grow extremely slowly. I think their gestation period is 18 months, and they take a 18-month break. So it's either 18 months or 15 months. It's very, very long. But they have like ultimately a 3-year reproductive cycle, which is insane. So shout out to dusky sharks. They deserve a lot of attention. They're not a well-known species, but they deserve a lot of attention. Tiger sharks, sand tiger sharks, black-nosed sharks, sand tigers again being critically endangered, scalloped hammerhead being critically endangered, short fin makos endangered, great whites or white sharks, which are now vulnerable, bull sharks, and then smooth dogfish. It's so weird seeing only one, and it's probably the gear that they're using, because smooth dogfish are extremely, and these are actually dusky smoothhounds. This is just a weird American name for them. I'm so sorry for saying dogfish. It's a smoothhound. It is a smoothhound. But these are actually extremely populous, and I think it's the gear that they're using. These guys feed on crabs and are stick to the bottom. So these are the numbers of sharks that can be caught on a commercial long line. But these are not. This is not necessarily reflective of true abundance. So here are all the survey stations in the Chesapeake Bay. So some of these areas actually snorkel, which is kind of fun. See that on the map. What is this? Juvenile sandbar sharks make up 92% of the total coastman landings in 2025, which is typical catch for recent years. Usually what they catch are sharpnose sharks, sandbar sharks, croaker, kingfishes, and bluntnose stingray. More maps on the research stations. I'll get back to the I think this is just going to summarize the research, but this is such a vital survey. And then also shout out to University of North Carolina Chapel Hill, because they also have a very old shark research survey too. So between North Carolina and Virginia, we've actually collected a lot of data, and it's kind of funny, like getting back to. I mean, for both institutions, and then more so VIMS, Virginia Institute of Marine Science, as far as contributions to shark research, pretty robust and pretty damn important as far as like what they've done. And I say that because, you know, when you think of sharks and shark research, you kind of think of like the charismatic labs in California and Florida. But shout out to VIMS. Like Virginia, like has contributed a lot to like the backbone of our understanding of sharks in North America. So just wanted to say that. A little bit of state pride. But anyway, yeah. So I think this probably is a good segue to the shark fin fishery era, part of this paper. Oh, nice. Quackers will be decked in green just because of favorite color. Is there anything being done for them right now? So is your question, Quackers, referring to shark population decline? Because if so, yes, there are protections in place. So, and I mentioned earlier that the United States actually has pretty good shark protection. One of the most important developments, and I want to say this is the early '90s as well, is it used to be like shark finning used to be a lot more prevalent, and it still is prevalent in different parts of the world. But here, it used to be that you could fin a shark and there's no consequences for that. And then I think it's the 90s in which the United States established this, but there was a law that you cannot bring a shark to shore unless all of its fins are intact. And this law had such a profound impact on eliminating finning, or like not eliminating, but like drastically reducing incidences of finning altogether, because the shark would be worthless if you brought its carcass back or its fins back. It's not worth anything. You can't take it. The big thing about that is it was a way to kind of monitor which species are being captured and to verify, okay, are you hunting and fishing a protected species, or are you taking are you fishing for a species that we deem like it's fairly sustainable, it's okay. So so that was a really huge gain as far as shark conservation. And I want to see, I know there's like I'm going to type in Virginia Marine Resource, hold on, Virginia Marine Resource Commission sharks. I want to pertain to sharks. There we go. I want to double check the latest information on. There's clear categories of which sharks can be captured and which can't. So, okay. So right now, commercially permitted large coastal sharks. So sharks that can be captured are blacktips, bulls, lemons, nurse, silky, spinner, and tiger. So that is, I don't want any shark to be fished, but these are species that conservation-wise are doing, they're either vulnerable or, nearly threatened. They're not critically endangered species, so that's fairly okay. This is wild. Commercially permitted hammerhead shark. This is really insane because all of these species, two of these species, the great hammerhead, scalped hammerhead, are critically endangered. Smooth hammerhead is vulnerable, but these two hammerheads are not. They're critically endangered and should be protected. So so it's kind of interesting where these two species receive international protection, but as far as in a sense you can't trade these species, but domestically in the United States these two are permitted for some reason, and I don't know why. And someone told me once that there was like some behind the scenes politicking regarding hammerheads. I don't know the details of that, but some weird stuff with this group. These are both critically endangered species. Commercially permitted, non-black small shark, sharp nose, very robust. If you had to fish for any shark nose is the best one because it reproduces quickly, it grows quickly, it can sustain fishing pressure well. Bonnethead is not a good example. Bonnethead is an endangered species, so I don't know why that's on the list. Fine-tooth, I think it's a vulnerable species. Actually, fine-tooth might be endangered. Hold on. Let's see. So it's kind of interesting how it's a hit and miss right now. Conroe-Nicholls. Oh no, fine-tooth is okay. It's nearly threatened, so that's actually not that bad. Interesting. Commercially permitted pelagic shark, blue shark, poor beagle, shouldn't be fishing for that, and thresher shark. So, oh my gosh. So this is a little painful. This is not the worst thing I've seen, but not the best. Let's look at the prohibited species. Okay, here we go. So sharks you can't fish for. Atlantic angel shark, or also known as a sand devil. That's a good move. That's a very precautionary move based on the fact that angel sharks in the Mediterranean and eastern Atlantic are really crashing. They're not doing well at all. So that's good that sand devils have good protection, or preliminary protection, preventive protection. Basking shark. This is a great species to prohibit. Basking sharks are endangered. They are huge. They grow slowly and reproduce slowly. I'm so glad to see that they're prohibited. They're commercially prohibited sharks. Wonderful. Big eye sand tiger, big eye six-gill, big eye thresher, big nose, black nose, Caribbean reef, Caribbean sharp nose. These kind of are in the middle in terms of like, yeah, they're vulnerable, or they're not like super endangered per se. So. Dusky, great shark to receive protection, endangered species. Galapagos, long-fin mako. Okay, this is great. So it's great to see, and I think this has changed. Long-fin mako is a protected species, which is great to see. Narrow-tooth, night shark, oceanic white tip. This is a critically endangered species. So glad to see this is protected. Sand tiger shark, critically endangered species. So glad to see it's protected. 7-gill, 6-gill, small tail, whale shark, charismatic endangered species. White shark, you cannot fish for white sharks. Vulnerable species, but still, like their life history characteristics, you should not be fishing for them. And then short fin mako. Thank goodness this is actually on this list as prohibited species. So, we're getting there. The area of opportunity is the hammerheads. I don't know why hammerheads are permitted, because they really shouldn't be. It's a good rule of thumb is if it has a hammerhead, don't fish for it. It's like they're really vulnerable sharks, so I don't know why they're on here. So, but and they are on international protection. So, anyway, let's see. Just catch up with comments. Sorry. It's pretty much a bull shark. Yes, I think we have seen this before too. But it's good to reemphasize just like. As far as hammerheads go, it's a weird thing where in the United States there's this idea that it's okay to fish for them, but globally not so much. So pretty interesting. Yes, I agree, Quackers. I don't want any shark to be fished either. So, and honestly, I think like the public awareness of them is getting so much better that yes, at 100% Howard, stop fitting now. And what's great is like the zeitgeist as far as what we know about sharks and like their plights. Like you could probably bump into a random person on the street and ask about if they know about shark finning, and they would say yes. And that's a good thing compared to like think of other animals that you could talk about their conservation plight and they're like, what is that? So shark finning is, and actually speaking about sharks specifically, shark finning is well known, but shrimp farming is not well known. In terms of like shrimp farming is a really big impact on sharks, where mangrove forests are cleared for these like shrimp farms, and they actually take away a lot of habitat from like smaller hammerhead species, and it's a pretty big problem, but that's not well known. So there's always it's kind of weird. I know I'm like kind of like using two different examples of like good conservation awareness and bad conservation awareness, and they're both about sharks. But I guess ultimately what I want to say is like I appreciate that the general public knows about shark finning. The general public knows that sharks are kind of like not doing super great, and that's a start. As far as like okay, we can kind of expand on that and keep rolling with that as far as really illustrating and showing what's going on with sharks specifically. Something I appreciate about our channel is that we're showing the nuances where we are highlighting species that are actually doing okay, and then highlighting species that are really critically endangered and going into why. So and I appreciate that because that kind of shows kind of the kaleidoscope of shark conservation, and how there's just like nuances and details where not all sharks are the same, and you have to approach them. You have to approach each species individually differently, and kind of address each species individual threats specifically. We've actually had examples, speaking earlier about fisheries crashes, where we've treated two sharks as one group, and it's actually led to very significant decline. So spiny dogfish and dusky smoothhounds, we treated them both as dogfish, and they have totally different life history characteristics, and that resulted in the spiny dogfish crashing in the 90s, and we were fortunately able to pull that back up. Quackers, you mentioned earlier you were wondering what this photo was about, and I think this was U.S. Navy propaganda. I'm going to summarize this. There was this whole series of like shark repellent stuff going on, and there was like a lot of... let me make sure I got this right. Hold on. I want to say this is part of the same series where there's like a whole slew of like shark repellent stuff, like propaganda to help kind of assuage sailors who are going into like the Indo-Pacific, that if you bump into a shark, use your shark repellent, you're going to be okay. But the reality is it doesn't work. There is research and studies proving that it just would not work at all. Let's see. Okay, here we go. ONR's interest in sharks was not limited to her sensory abilities and shark repellents. According to a 1982 article by Gerald D. Sturges in Orlando Sentinel, the Navy founded a project to convert the shark into a remote-controlled torpedo that could ram a ship while carrying a load of explosives. Oh, the research was conducted under the name of Project Headgear at Mote Marine Lab. Wow. Okay. This is interesting. Let me reread this. In a 1982 article by Gerald D. Sturges in the Orlando Sentinel, the Navy founded a project to convert the shark into a remote-control torpedo that could ram a ship while carrying a load of explosives. The research was conducted under the name of Project Headgear at Mote Marine Lab and the Lerner Marine Laboratory in the Bahamas from 1958 to 1971. Sturges wrote that the program ended unsuccessfully after 13 years of testing. However, the Navy continues to classify it as a secret and refuses to release anything. The Office of Naval Research said only that the report is classified secret and is currently being reviewed for declassification. My attempt to obtain information about the project from ONR in 2013 also yielded nothing, and I could not determine whether the project was declassified or not. So, and then here, so this is what the illustration was. I'm really glad you brought attention to this, Quackers. So this is what the illustration is about. Project Headgear, which is a Navy project. So, yep. Now, I'm gonna blow your mind in a second. And you might have heard about this too. So, I've never heard about this with sharks, but this is not the first time I've heard the U.S. Navy experimenting with marine animals for military purposes. And the famous... maybe I shouldn't say it's famous, but the example that I go to, and I've heard, and I actually don't know what happened with it Project Headgear, is dolphins. and military use of dolphins. And I will say, so the shark thing, I agree, is ridiculous, and I am so glad this went nowhere. Thank goodness, because like there's so much stuff that I can imagine this causes so much damage for sharks, and sharks, they're very yeah, they're this is not the right. I shouldn't use this word, but like they're very like pure beings. Like they're very like sensory animals that they're not like white sharks are kind of tactful and tactical, but but they're not whales. They're not like whales have a whole other level of intelligence in terms of like whales have culture. Whales have you could argue they have language. Like there's a lot going on with whales that sharks don't really have, and like that's okay. Like they're two different groups of animals where I feel like sharks are very sensorily intelligent. Like they're so plugged into their environment. They're so like they're like these pure manifestations of ocean that you couldn't do a project like this, and you couldn't do this successfully. And I'm so glad this died because it's stupid. I agree, it's really stupid. The dolphin thing, I don't know what happened to that project, but I have heard of that project before. That the U.S. Navy was training dolphins to spy or to do missions, and I don't know the latest information on that. And I actually, because of a dolphin's intelligence and because of their capabilities in terms of that intelligence, I really don't know the status of it and if it's been done. I don't know if there's missions that dolphins have actually gone on. And it sounds ludicrous, but dolphins are such intelligent animals that I can see that has a little bit more what's the word? That has a bit more merit to it than the whole shark project. The shark project is ridiculous, but the dolphin project, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. So probably hasn't gone anywhere because I've clearly not heard it. No one's clearly heard of a successful dolphin mission, but I definitely that is true that the Navy has experimented with dolphins on missions before. They have done experiments with training dolphins to execute missions, which is kind of interesting. So, oh, thank you. I love this, Quackers. Thank you. Like they're smart in a different sense. Sharks are smart in a different sense. Smart not in a human way, but really they're just a different kind of intelligence. I love that. Thank you. So we'll read the shark fishery era, and next week we're going to do a classic episode. So let me know in the comments if there's a particular shark species you'd like to cover for next week, since we're getting close to 10:30. But the shark fin fishery era. In 1972, after some 25 years of open antagonism and hostility between the United States and the People's Republic of China, and after extensive diplomatic negotiations... Oh, yeah! I love this. All I want is a shark with a head-mounted laser beam, Dr. Evil. Yeah, great Austin Powers reference. It's been forever since I've seen Austin Powers, but yeah, fantastic reference. Oh my gosh. Sharks with frickin' laser beams. Hostility between United States and China, and after extensive diplomatic negotiations, President Richard Nixon visited China as a step in normalization of relations between the two countries. During the next 2 decades, complex economic and financial ties developed steadily between the two countries. In due time, the combination of Chinese energy and cheap labor, American capital and know-how, and other factors helped make China the manufacturing colossus of the early 21st century. China's economic boom, beginning in the late 20th century, resulted in improved standard of living for some segments of the Chinese population, and a greater proportion of society was able to afford luxuries that had previously been out of reach. One of these luxuries is shark fin soup. In China, and like, I am going to make a note of this. It's really sad to see this because I know I often praise the United States for its contributions to shark research, but I do have to acknowledge that the trade relationship between China and the United States and this kind of development, you have to acknowledge that, okay, the United States in this way negatively contributed to sharks. So And I have to acknowledge that. I want to be completely fair, in the sense that, it's kind of interesting how each decision has an impact. Related to that, the United States did nuclear testing in the Pacific Ocean. Other countries, I think, did too, but primarily the United States did nuclear testing in the Pacific Ocean, and you can actually trace radioactivity in sharks in that area. There have been really interesting studies of residual radioactivity in sharks, like that have been in that area that have been exposed to nuclear testing. And the degree to which it's been traced, it's been found in living individuals. So I'm sure there's sharks that have definitely been horribly impacted by that. But the studies that were conducted on living sharks, it's trace amounts that were not necessarily lethal. But still, it is a very stark example of it countries' impacts on nature. So it's interesting reading this economic impact, like the United States economic impact, in a way that contributed to shark fin soup. And then also, Jaws is an American novel. So again, I want to be completely fair, and I want to acknowledge, I often, and rightfully so, celebrate the good contributions that the United States have done to shark research. But we have to acknowledge a lot of the negative things too, in the sense that Jaws is an American novel and an American movie. The nuclear testing is an American thing, and then this impact economically. So, and it's just interesting to see, and it's this weird two-pronged thing, right? Where it's like you have these negative impacts, but then you have some of the best shark research in the world, and actually foundations of great shark conservation policy comes from the United States too. So it's a lot. So, yeah. Oh, I love this quacker. Santa getting some wild requests this year. Continuing this, in China, a soup utilizing the fibers found in shark fins has been considered a symbol of prosperity and health for centuries. It is a dish served at special occasions such as weddings and a demonstration of wealth and class. Consequently, the demand of shark fin soup increased substantially. Soon after the establishment of diplomatic relations between the United States and China in January 1979, American and Chinese merchants were figuring out what businesses could be conducted with the other. When Chinese merchants expressed a growing demand for shark fins, American entrepreneurs sought to fulfill it. The demand became high in China and other Asian countries, and sharks were one of the few fish resources not targeted or fully utilized by the U.S. commercial fisheries. While there was a strong U.S. recreational fishery for sharks, the commercial fisheries had not targeted sharks since the late 1940s, with the exceptions of poor beagle that had been targeted in the early 1960s off New England, and dusky sharks that had been taken incidentally in Japanese tuna fisheries in the Gulf of Mexico. In the same decade, the shark stocks in the southeastern U.S. waters were relatively high. It took about a decade for business and financial channels to develop, and by the late 1970s, substantial changes had occurred in shark utilization. The high prices paid for the fins encouraged entry into the shark fishery. The tuna and swordfish fisheries that previously had discarded sharks, dead or alive, now began to keep sharks for their fins. The low price paid for the meat resulted in fishermen just removing the fins from sharks and discarding the sharks into the ocean, thus saving their freezer space and the more lucrative tunas and swordfish. This wasteful practice became known as finning. Now again, this is no longer legal, but and I know this is really hard to read, but it's important to fully understand, the picture of shark history in North American shark culture. So, also, Howard, I just saw your comment. We actually did do basking sharks, but I can, and we might have covered all the lamniforms, but I want to see. I think we've done most of the large planktivorous sharks. I'm gonna grab the book really quick. 1 second. My little pocket guide of sharks of the world. Got to see if there's a new species, something in the vein of like a basket shark. So maybe a larger species that, because we've done basket sharks, whale sharks, and the megamouth. Let's see if we missed anybody. Okay, I'm gonna peruse this in more detail in a little bit. It's a great suggestion. I think that was episode 5, because I remember and Roy was on it. I think Roy and I saw a basket shark breaching in that episode. So if you haven't seen that yet, please check out episode 5 of the Shark Streams, because it's such a cool moment seeing a basket shark breach. I never thought something that large could do that, but they apparently breached just like white sharks, which is so cool. In just one decade, the U.S. commercial shark landings grew from 135 tons in 1979 to 7,000 tons in 1989. Jeez. Conservation organizations and regulatory agencies were both concerned about the rapid growth of the unregulated shark fishery. On June 3rd, 1989, the 5 East Coast Fishery Management Councils requested the Secretary of Commerce develop a fishery management plan for the shark fishery. Their concern was that it would take too long for the 5 councils to develop their own, and that, in view of the rapidly growing fishery, the delay could cause irreparable damage to shark stocks. A team of NOAA personnel was assembled in 1989 to prepare a management plan for sharks on the East Coast. The National Marine Fisheries Service had little data on shark catches, and what existed was not broken down by species. So personnel set out to try to obtain the data on shark landings from the commercial industry. Little data were available because in general, fishermen did not record the information needed for stock assessment purposes, landings by species, catch per unit effort, etc. Now again, I mentioned Jack Music earlier. Jack had a data set of sharks in the 70s and 80s, so this would have helped. And also the UNC, University of North Carolina Chapel Hill, also had a data set that would have helped. Nevertheless, a shark fisheries management plan was prepared in 1992 and published December 10th, 1992. The plan was data deficient for the reasons cited, but some of its predictions would prove wrong. The key to its success was a provision for change and improvement by designating an operational team which could amend the plan as new data were obtained. Over the next 2 decades, the plan was amended many times. The plan not only protected the shark stocks, but it ushered a new era of research on sharks. The plan and its effects will be covered in a future article. So this is really great. I know this was really hard to read, but on the positive end, again, of American contribution as a shark scientist, of shark conservation, the National Marine Fisheries Service of the United States and the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration both caught on to the danger of this fishery and established the protections that are starting to, firstly, have stabilized some populations and are starting to kind of pay off in preliminary recovery. So specifically in Virginia, there's been some observation that, okay, we're seeing more tiger sharks, which is good. This was like early 2021, but we're very, very, very cautiously optimistic in terms of, it's still going to take a very long time to really establish and repair shark stocks and shark populations. A lot of the species on IUCN Red List that you see are endangered or vulnerable. Their stocks are either stabilizing or decreasing. It's not often that you see a stock increasing. There are sharks that are increasing, but right now I think we're still in the stabilization era, and I think we're going to go up, which is great. But I think we're still in that period of catching it in time for most species. I think some species will still suffer, unfortunately. But in North America, at least, I think we've caught a lot of it in time. So we'll see what happens, in the next few decades, as far as, and it has to be measured in decades because sharks, again, grow and reproduce so slowly. And I know it's like the mantra of this channel: sharks reproduce slowly, grow slowly, are late to mature, but so vital to remember as far as their life history. So, thank you, Quackers. Hope you have a great night. It was good to see you, and happy St. Paddy's Day tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us. So, we have about 20 minutes left, so I think we'll kind of skim through. There's a couple articles I wanted to touch on in terms of the impact of Jaws in the years after Jaws. Before we get to that, picking a shark for next week. We've covered so many of the large species, actually. Let's see. Did we do... I have one in mind that I think there is a new kind of 6-gill or 7-gill shark. And I want to make sure we haven't touched upon it yet. So let's see. I'm checking my. I think I have a Hexantiform. I do have a Hexantiform playlist. We've got blunt nose, big eye, broad nose. I think there's a new one. Oh. Oh, actually, this would be really cool. Okay. So, what do you think about the sharp nose? I'm actually shocked we didn't do this one yet. The sharp nose seven gill shark. So it's not quite a large species. I was trying to find a large species, like the six gill sharks are large, but it is actually an extremely cool species and kind of famous. I'm surprised we haven't covered it yet because we did blunt nose six gill, big eye six gill, broad nose seven gill, the two frilled sharks, but we haven't done this one. So, and that might round out Hexantiforms actually, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to type this in the chat. Sharp nose seven gill shark, Hiptranchius perlo. That I think that might be a really cool one to cover for next week. But let me know. Let me know what you think, Howard. Yeah, it's a really cool. Oh, awesome, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really cool species with these really nasty teeth, and like there's actually diving opportunity. I think there are some scenarios we can dive with them. So it's a deep water species, but sometimes they can come up. I think at night, kind of closer to shore. So, but yeah, that will be our shark for next week. So. Wrapping up for tonight, I'll just kind of skim through this. Let's see. Blockbuster book and film spawned an industry and unwitting backlash that killed sharks. Today, a new ethos is developing to see, understand, and save sharks from exploitation and extinction. So we kind of know the whole sports fishing, the trophy hunting. But I want to see the what happened after. Took close to 5 decades before Spielberg finally admitted he couldn't help but feel a little responsible for the negative stereotype that Jaws inspired. Success of the film spawned several sequels, an entire industry of television programming, including Discovery Channel's Shark Week episodes and National Geographic's Shark Fest. Addressing the genre of shark horror films, a new film produced by Steven Scarletta called Sharksploitation documents the history and examples of shark thrillers generated by Jaws. Since 1970, the abundance of oceanic shark and rays has declined by more than 70% as a result of an 18-fold increase in fishing pressure, according to a nature study conducted in 2022. As a result of the depletion, the risk for global extinction now impacts 3/4 of shark and ray species. Our irrational fear of sharks, a general disconnect from them, and the man-eating myth generated by media attention whenever a shark attack occurs has not helped protect sharks. Although Jaws might have inspired a negative attitude towards white sharks in particular and all sharks in general, we can't hold Spielberg entirely responsible. 21 years after publication and not long before his death in 2006, Peter Benchley, the author of Jaws, reminisced, "I couldn't write Jaws today. The extensive new knowledge of sharks would make it impossible for me to create in good conscience a villain of the magnitude and malignity of the original." So this is a pretty famous regret. Peter Benchley, I believe, did what's the word? He definitely regretted Jaws, and I've heard this before, where he really cared about trying to do his best to help repair that reputation and bring some awareness to shark conservation. And like, I'm actually reading, I'm looking up here because I have a poster from one of my own book signings. I had a really nice blurb from Dr. Caitlin Kite about one of my books. And in that she writes, Peter Benchley, author of the book that inspired the movie Jaws, was well aware that sharks have a public relations problem. He spent many years combating the misconceptions that have made shark conservation such a tricky issue. And then she kind of goes into my books and stuff. But the point being that he really regretted, Peter Benchley really regretted Jaws and tried to amend the damage. So in 2022, Spielberg followed Benchley's lead. That's one of the things I still fear, not to get eaten by a shark, but that sharks are somehow mad at me for the feeding frenzy of crazy sport fishermen that happened after 1975. To this day, I regret the decimation of the shark populations because of the book and the film. I really, truly regret that. Although Jaws is a highly successful film and generated an entire subgenre, its portrayal of sharks as dangerous man-eaters is far from reality and has a lasting impact on public perception of these fascinating and important animals. However, like Peter Benchley, Spielberg's celebrity voice can make a dramatic impact on people's views for sharks in a positive light. A new social media trend has developed with filmmakers and photographers seeking sharks and depicting them as beautiful animals as they are. Decades after the book and film, passionate shark conservation groups like Shark Stewards are educating the public not to fear sharks, but fear for them and work to protect them from extinction. And then this is just from Shark Stewards, so is a source. So, yeah, sensationalism was the rule of the day. Benchley just followed the trend. Yep. And it's an interesting comment on art, too, where it's kind of an interesting morality tale in a weird way, where, and I think about this a lot personally, where you want to make sure that, like there's, like you want to make sure that whatever you are making as a piece, is a good work, in a sense that it has to be something that is a positive impact on people, and, I don't know how aware he was when he wrote Jaws of how much damage it would cause. And like, to be fair, I don't know if it was something he expected or could have predicted that it would, like I think he could have expected and predicted that it would freak people out, but I don't know if he would have expected or predicted that it would inspire trophy hunting, to be fair. And it's kind of tricky. I guess, like, it just comes down to there's so much responsibility in creating a work of art and creating a message and having it be popular, where it's like, what is the impact of this thing that you're making? And, is it something that's ultimately positive for the world, or is it something that, can have unintended consequences or inspire something that's not so good? So it's that Spider-Man quote, which is also, I think, from a philosopher, but with great power comes great responsibility. So it's a good quote. I mean, it's a good quote. So I've had this image up for a while, but that's because this is on another article, regarding the impact of Jaws. So again, we're gonna just skip the Jaws stuff and just see what happened afterwards. So let's see. And I'm just going to find anything that's kind of new. Ironically, the convention... So I talked about CITES, but the Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora came into force mere days after Jaws was released. It would take another 40 years before the white shark was listed on the CITES Appendix 2. A negative public perception of the avoidance of beaches are perhaps one of the end of the spectrum of consequences. As a policy researcher, Dr. Christopher Neff from the University of Sydney has pointed out, the way we speak about sharks can influence policy. And in the case of Western Australia, he has argued that the Jaws effect has seriously influenced policy responses to shark bite incidents on the coast even years after the film's release. There has been much said about the damage Jaws has done. Plenty of finger pointing, even the odd apology. But among the film's litany of unintended consequences, a cohort of shark scientists and conservationists inspired by the film is perhaps one of the strangest. Which is really cool. And I will say, like, weirdly enough, kind of on that note, Jaws is one of the first exposures I've had. I mean, it's not the first. I think in the weird way, because I was a kid in the 90s, right? So it's like, I remember watching the rerun of Jaws, but also this was in this era of Discovery Channel and Animal Planet, where there's a lot of shark specials. And in a weird way, these things kind of... And also we had shark books, too. And it's like these things impacted me in tandem, where it's like Jaws was an exposure. But I actually remembered really liking like the whole dissection scene, like, you know, like when Hooper is like dissecting the tiger shark, or the which sounds really weird, but that's definitely like a biology nerd kind of thing. You know, or just any of the scenes with the sharks. I didn't really care as a kid. It's kind of funny. Like, I feel like children have such a weird attitude towards like when you look at some of the scenes in Jaws today as an adult, they're like horrifying and bloody and scary. But like as a kid, like I think sometimes kids have this weird attitude towards like action and violence, where it's like, oh man, that's so cool. And related to that, I just loved watching the shark, and it's weird that Jaws and the Discovery Channel and Animal Planet in the '90s, they both kind of cultivated this exposure to the sharks that ultimately proved beneficial. Where it's like, I love sharks and I love talking about them, and I love spreading awareness about all of them, not just the charismatic species, but like just the ones that are not well known. Just kind of understand their biodiversity in total. So in a weird way, like this little line kind of applies to me too, which I think is kind of funny. But I'll read to that more in detail. Howard, so many concepts about sharks have been debunked since the time of rogue sharks, white sharks being solitary hunters, exaggerated accounts of feeding frenzies. Exactly, like 100%. Jaws is kind of hilarious to watch now because there's some science in it that kind of works, but there's a lot of stuff that's just crap. And it's either outdated or it's just, like you said, debunked. So the rogue shark is a debunked thing. Like you said, just like the territoriality thing. It's kind of, that one is actually kind of interesting because the way it's framed in Jaws is kind of sensational. But there are white sharks in, I want to say, Southern Africa, where they will get a little like, and actually Southern Australia too. There are white sharks that will get kind of like territorial with each other about certain patches of hunting ground. So they'll kind of like chase each other out of the area. You probably have seen images of white sharks with scars, and some of those are mating scars if it's female sharks. But for male sharks, some of that actually could be, and regardless male or female, some of that could be territorial bites, kind of threat displays or territorial bites, which is kind of interesting. So in that sense, it's weirdly enough, it's kind of like a shark protecting its feeding ground. In that sense, it kind of lends into the whole Jaws territoriality theory, but the way it's depicted in the film is a little ridiculous. It's, because it's just this one big shark that is just staying in this. But that's the interesting thing. It's like the behavior of the shark in Jaws is sight fidelity too, where it's like where sharks of varying species are known to stay in a certain area for whatever reason. So sand tiger sharks, for example, are the best example. They actually love shipwrecks, certain wrecks and reefs. Just maybe it has the right food supply, maybe it's the right access to mates. It's they display sight fidelity. Although I'm going to contradict myself again, because white sharks are a global species that travel great distances, so they don't really do that. But then when you look at maps of white sharks tracks, though, now on this coast, there is a huge concentration of them in Massachusetts. They exist up and down the coast, like from Florida all the way up to, I want to say Nova Scotia. Yeah, Nova Scotia for sure. But because the seal population has rebounded in Massachusetts, there actually is a huge concentration of them there now. So I don't know. It's kind of funny. Like, a lot of Jaws is crap. A lot of it is just goofy crap. But it's kind of funny, like, talking it through. It's like, yeah, some of it is not terrible, which is interesting. But the impact is terrible. But the actual science of Jaws, like that is a really good watch party. Like a biology nerd watch party would be like. And actually, Jurassic Park is similar, where those are both good movies to watch in terms of like, how real is this and how stupid is this, and like just to pick it apart and have these kind of conversations. So interesting. So anyway, sorry, a little bit of a tangent, but when it comes to wins for shark conservation, Amani Weber-Schultz is very happy an unintended consequence of the Jaws effect. A PhD candidate at the New Jersey Institute of Technology, Amani is also the co-founder and chief financial officer of Minorities in Shark Science. Oh, this is a really good group. I do know this group. Minorities in Shark Sciences, an organization determined to make shark science a welcoming space for gender minorities of color. I felt fascination and a sense of pure entertainment she enthuses about her first viewing of the film. And I think I heard so much about the film, and so much of the time had passed passed since it came out that by the time I watched it, I already knew what the movie was about, and that was an exaggeration and incorrect display of how sharks behave. So Jaws wasn't perhaps Amani's first encounter with sharks in stories she was equipped with the knowledge to debunk any real fear. But the film is not an isolated case of poor PR and shark storytelling. When I was a kid, TV shows that focus on sharks really emphasized their frightening side. All they used was scary music and words that could play very well in the fear of sharks as a whole. I watched Jaws much younger than I should have. Dr. James Leah starts with a chuckle, and I loved it as a film and still do. I was a child who already feared the water, and Jaws certainly played into some of my worries. But the fascination for sharks it sparked in me overrode all that. I clearly remember wanting to get books on sharks and to learn more about them. I thought that the animal that you barely get to see in the film was so intriguing. I had to know as much as I could. This is really cool to read, honestly, you know. The result of this fascination, it created shark research and ultimately a lifetime dedicated shark conservation as the CEO of Save Our Seas Foundation. I remember the books my parents could give me were overwhelmingly stories of attacks and survivors, and all the media we could find, aside from one or two biology-focused encyclopedia-style books, played morbidly into our dual fear and fascination with sharks. It was difficult to find much else. I completely agree with this, and I'm very happy to say this has changed. So, and part of me, like, establishing Dr. Jaws was one of the things I really cared about when I first started was combating this. But one thing that I've been surprised by and pleasantly surprised by is this actually changed, you know, regardless of my own impact on it, this actually changed. A lot of people, you know, really started to contribute to popular redefinitions of our understanding of sharks. Scientists got a lot better about like communicating the research via like, you know, YouTube or social media or like TikTok or just like kind of creative things. Like they've actually gotten a lot better about public outreach. It used to be that, you know, popular media was controlled by giants like Discovery Channel, where they would, you know, in a certain phase do good programming, and then they started to make crappy content, and you couldn't get anything else. It was either that, and then research was behind, you know, closed doors, where it's like it's very, very hard to share research with the public because you know, it's either like too complicated for the public to understand, or just like just really like there really wasn't much leakage between, like, from academia into just the general population. There really wasn't a reason to like share a lot of that research. And then now with accessibility, with the advent of the internet, and with the rise of social media, it really actually has helped break those barriers down and help, you know, kind of broaden society's understanding and accessibility to actual shark science and actual shark conservation needs, and starts to break the mold from sharks are mindless, you know, eating machines to, oh, this is actually, you know, this is we totally got it wrong in terms of like what they are. So, you know, they're biodiverse, they're nuanced, they're beautiful, they're really important for ecosystems, and you know, they're not all white sharks. Like, again, white sharks are just so rare compared to the rest of sharks. So, Howard, I remember watching shows that focus on one shark but lurk in the background. I often spotted other sharks hovering in the distance. And it's so cool where it's like, you know, and that's so true, right? Where it would be a special about a tiger shark or a white shark, but then there's all these other ones in the frame, you know, like especially like documentaries about sharks in reef habitats. You know, and I have to commend things like Blue Planet. I know I keep talking about Blue Planet, but really Blue Planet did like there's some notes on Blue Planet that I have where it's like I think Blue Planet is great. I think there's a whole side tangent about, like, I don't have critiques about Blue Planet, but I have notes on it where I have comments on it. But I will say Blue Planet pretty much overall does a really good job showcasing a diversity of marine animals, where it's not just, I mean, it is very vertebrate focused, but it's not just showing like the big charismatic sharks. There's actually a pretty good menagerie of sharks in the entire Blue Planet series. Off the top of my head, I could think of, you have white sharks, white sharks, blue sharks, white tip reef sharks, baskin sharks, dogfish, pajama sharks, six-gill sharks, actually. They actually have a six-gill shark episode. So they actually cover. It's not just the really flashy ones. It's also they have a pretty good breadth of sharks. Actually, I think I have a clip from Blue Planet too. Sorry, hold on. Yes. So I think we might end on this kind of as a positive note because Blue Planet I think has been such a really great series that where Discovery Channel has gone into sensationalism and just junk, continue to treat sharks like these mindless eating machines. But the reality is, we changed. We caught on to the fact that we're really hurting them and causing a lot of damage to their world and to them directly. And that we misunderstand what they are, and we've expanded and flowered in our understanding of them in the sense that there's so much more access to what they are. There's so much more reverence for what they are, and there's so much more understanding of their conservation needs, how many sharks there are, and what we know about them, and where we should be directing the future as far as their conservation goes. So. I think with that, it's a really good note to end on. So, and definitely agree, Howard. Incredible footage on those six gill sharks. So, I like this little picture of a white shark looking upward, and I think that's my perspective too. I think when you look at the large time scale, it's amazing how much it's changed and how much human understanding of sharks has changed and honestly improved. It has improved. There's still a lot of work to do as far as their conservation. But as far as our perception of them, massive improvement from where we were. So, which is really, really cool. So, true in fact, the changes came rapidly from a cultural view. So, and I think it's a great way to wrap up our North American cultural series, shark culture series. This was a really good two-part series. Just seeing that change and seeing that the future, as far as sharks go, I mean, we're launching from a platform of enhanced knowledge and enhanced access to seeing what these animals are as themselves. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here for tonight. And I'm excited for next week to resume our normal programming with the sharp-nosed seven-gill shark. I think it's going to be a really cool species to study. But until then, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and happy St. Paddy's Day for tomorrow. And tune in next week for the sharp-nosed seven-gill shark. But cheers. I'll see you later. Thanks for watching.